Greetings, I'm your host, Dr. Wolfula, and in this video, I'm covering the remainder of the Devil's Due Halloween comics written by Stefan Hutchinson. If you missed my review of the Halloween Night Dance comic, click this card or the link in the description to watch that video. In this video, I'm primarily covering Halloween, the First Death of Laurie Strode. But there was one other Halloween comic released by Devil's Due Publishing that I want to address first. Halloween 30 Years of Terror, celebrating, and this might surprise you, the 30th anniversary of the Halloween series. 30 Years of Terror is an anthology of 5 stories drawn by various artists and written by Stefan Hutchinson, and each story tells of different characters new and familiar in the Halloween H2O timeline, filling in some gaps between the movies. The stories are all pretty simple, but it's interesting to see brief glimpses of unexplored corners of the Halloween universe.
I want you to go down the street to the Mackenzie's house. I want you to tell them to call the police.
The first story of 30 Years of Terror is Trick or Treat, which takes place on the Halloween of 1978 and shows Tommy and Lindsay going to the Mackenzie house like Laurie told them to. Then, years later, out of revenge, I suppose, for sheltering the youths Laurie was babysitting, Michael swaps the Mackenzie's trick-or-treat candy with razor blade candy. But who eats the candy on the doorstep? You do that at home and have your parents inspect/eat your trick-or-treat candy. Michael is just keeping Haddonfield on its toes. This story might also imply that Michael was responsible for the kid in Halloween 2 getting a razor blade in his mouth as a little prank on the side.
You okay? Let's go. Just walk real slow. Come on.
The second story of 30 Years of Terror is titled POV, and as the title implies, it takes place from the point of view of Michael, and also his next victim, the Miss Haddonfield 1991 beauty pageant winner. POV is a pretty simple but gory story with no dialogue, but it is interesting to see a vividly realized death like in the movies, played out over multiple pages. Still not much of a story here. It was just a death foreshadowed in the Autopsies comic that finally got fully depicted in this comic, along with another one I'll get to later. The third story of 30 Years of Terror is Visiting Hours, a Laurie Strode tale about her dreams while committed to the Grace Anderson Asylum. Laurie dreams about a different life she could have had and how, even in these dream lives, Michael still destroys everything because that's all she knows now. The story also notes the irony of how Laurie first met Michael, her killer brother, while he was committed in an insane asylum, and how the siblings have their final confrontation in this timeline at least, while Laurie's committed in an asylum. This story definitely does what it can to enhance the weak opening of Halloween Resurrection. Visiting Hours also encompasses pretty well the overarching style of writing that Stefan Hutchinson used for his Halloween comics. The narratives were generally a bit abstract, dreamlike, and melancholic.
Tarantula Man?
Laurie, what's the Boogeyman?
The penultimate story of 30 Years of Terror is Tommy and the Boogeyman, and it doesn't have Tommy saying evil dies tonight, so you can put down your clothes irons and baseball bats.
Evil dies tonight!
This story reveals that Tommy Doyle becomes a comic book artist in the H2O timeline, and through his wife's pearl clutching at her husband's chosen profession, potentially corrupting their child Jamie, we finally get a glimpse at Tarantula Man, one of the comics Tommy tried to make Laurie read him in the original film. And apparently this 1970s EC-inspired comic is about an arachnid dude that looks straight out of a Rob Zombie movie and who likes to sniff high school girls' panties. Oh, and I guess also drink their blood. I suppose the story draws some parallels between Michael's and Tarantula Man's predatory natures and how they influenced Tommy Doyle to make comics. But the most interesting part of Tommy and the Boogeyman is that it implies that Halloween's Thorn Trilogy timeline is actually a comic book Tommy created in the H2O universe. Tommy Doyle's idea of what happened to Michael Myers, and it's an interesting way to reconcile the two timelines. H2O Tommy even lives in Salt Lake City where Halloween 4 and 5 were shot, and the Thorn stuff definitely works better as a crazy comic storyline, and of course, Tommy would cast himself as the hero of his own comic.
Michael. God damn you.
The final story, Repetition Compulsion, was drawn by Night Dance's illustrator Tim Seeley and tells about Dr. Loomis's attempt to track Michael down on the Halloween of 1989, with Michael periodically breaking into Loomis's house, leaving cryptic clues of what the Shape is up to next, challenging the Doc to figure out the killer's next move, like a Halloween-themed Riddler. For reasons that aren't revealed, Marion Chambers has been regularly checking up on Loomis and assisting him, and it definitely makes me think that he's been railing her.
This is for Dr. Loomis.
Following Michael's clue, Loomis ends up believing that Michael just left a dying dog for the doc just to mess with the old man, when in reality the dog was a distraction while Michael targeted a school teacher nearby who told her students that smiles could chase their fears away, with Michael ultimately twisting anything hopeful in the town of Haddonfield into a grim warning. The teacher's death, hanging from a swing set with a forced smile held open with barbed wire, is very similar to Nurse Chambers' demise in Halloween Kills, and some of the deaths and themes in these Hutchinson Halloween comics lead me to believe that someone making the recent Halloween trilogy was a fan of these comics. The teacher's death was also foreshadowed in Autopsies, which gives the impression that these comics had a very planned out, overarching storyline behind them. Halloween 30 Years of Terror is a fun little experiment telling some micro-Halloween stories. It's like a bag of fun-sized Halloween candy. None of the stories are filling, but they're a sweet little treat.
Don't you know what happens on Halloween? We get candy.
Finally, we move on to the last official Halloween comic to date, The First Death of Laurie Strode, written to the end by Hutchinson and drawn by Jeff Zorno, a 3-issue miniseries that was never completed as only 2 issues were published. The First Death of Laurie Strode essentially bridges the gap between Halloween 2 and H2O, explaining how Laurie Strode went into hiding under the assumed identity Carrie Tate, the headmistress of a private school in California, kind of making this comic a truer Halloween 3.
Stop it!
The First Death of Laurie Strode takes place within a year after the events of the original Halloween, beginning just days later as Annie Brackett is finally buried, and Laurie falls into a deep depression as she struggles to come to grips with the truth that she isn't Laurie Strode but Cynthia Myers, the little sister of Michael once believed to have died in a car crash with her biological parents, and I'm sure Michael tampered with their car before he was committed.
Cow! Cow!
Laurie ends up turning to alcohol and drugs to numb her pain as she keeps seeing visions of her dead friends, and worse, believes she still sees her brother Michael stalking her. Laurie pushes the closest thing to a family she has away, her adopted parents, the Strodes, who she feels lied to her this whole time, and it's revealed that any memories Laurie had of Michael were repressed following beatings from her adopted dad at her mention of Michael Myers' name.
I told you. I'm not your mother.
Laurie even chews out Jimmy the paramedic for wanting to see her on her graduation day, despite his accidental head injury causing him to suffer from seizures. Laurie just wants to forget about Halloween 1978 and push anyone who reminds her of it to the side, with her only friend being Sally Winters, a girl who was at home with the flu on Halloween 78 and who was on the phone with Alice in Halloween 2.
Sally, I can hear the sirens coming.
They said the guy got away.
Interestingly, Sally was voiced by the same actress that played Annie in the original Halloween, Nancy Keys.
Oh, subtle, isn't he?
But Sally's friendship to Laurie is a cold comfort. Sally just enables Laurie's self-destruction. This story also teases some revelation about the late Ben Tramer and why Ben dressed like Michael Myers on the night of his death, but we'll never find it out now. Dr. Loomis attempts to help Laurie as he plans to move into Haddonfield, despite objections from the mourning Sheriff Brackett. And yeah, much like in the Thorn Trilogy timeline, Dr. Loomis in the H2O timeline implausibly survives being blown up. But I'll look the other way on this lack of realism, just because it's Dr. Loomis and he's cool. Loomis and Laurie are the only ones who believe Michael to still be alive. It's revealed that a dead firefighter was found at the hospital Michael burned in. The firefighter's neck was broken, and Michael steals the remaining shape masks thrown away by the local hardware store, guaranteeing Michael will have backups for years to come. And Mr. Riddle, the local creeper who looks like Jim Cedow, winds up mysteriously dead.
Mr. Riddle was watching you, Laurie. Mr. Riddle is 87.
But nobody else wants to believe the signs. They just want to move on and pretend Michael never happened. Laurie is also given her sister Judith's diary, which reveals that Michael showed warning signs of being a killer. But because his parents babied him, they refused to see anything wrong with Michael while he fantasized killing them. I definitely prefer the idea of Michael coming from a normal, loving family. He could come from anywhere.
There's an instinctive force within him.
Ultimately, the story takes a turn when, on the Halloween of 1979, Laurie does cocaine with a dude who looks a lot like John Carpenter but is named Mike Aspinwall. And little trivia, Mike is named after a fan in the Halloween message boards and is actually also a viewer of my vids who pointed this fact out to me. Small world. Anyway, while Alice is getting fucked by Mike Aspinwall, pretending he's Ben Tramer, I don't blame her, outside Laurie's attacked at the party by Michael wearing an Emmett Kelly clown mask, considered for Michael's adult mask in the original Halloween before it was decided to use the altered Captain Kirk mask. The Emmett Kelly mask is also a mask that the Joker wore in the Batman TV show, and seemingly also inspired the mask that the Joker wore in The Dark Knight. And it's a creepy mask, but it doesn't say Michael Myers like the blank face they went with. As Laurie escapes her clown-clad older brother, he beats her to Jimmy's house where the boy is brutally murdered, and that's it. That's the end of the second issue, and they never published the third.
Look, Jimmy, rule number 1, never get involved with a patient.
Why was issue 3 of The First Death of Laurie Strode never published? The Halloween comics were among the most popular released by Devil's Due Publishing at the time, but according to writer Stefan Hutchinson, financial problems at Devil's Due resulted in nobody working on the Halloween comics getting paid for months of work. So Devil's Due abruptly canceled the series when it became clear they couldn't keep making Hutchinson and his artists work for free. The final issue had some covers and unfinished artwork released by Hutchinson, and it would have shown Laurie faking her death and becoming Carrie Tate with the help of Loomis. But nearly 20 years later, it's likely this issue will never be completed. Another Halloween comic miniseries was previewed by Hutchinson before the line was canceled, The Mark of Thorn, which would have further explored the idea of the Thorn trilogy being a comic series drawn by Tommy Doyle as a way to cope. An interesting meta idea of a comic book within a comic book, but the story would have also involved Tommy and his family in the sights of the real Michael Myers, with the Thorn comic and the reality of the H2O timeline blurring. There was supposed to be even further Halloween comics in what would ultimately make up Stefan Hutchinson's Black Rose storyline. One story was to be called The Babysitter Murders, and involve Michael behind a series of murders in Chicago, with Loomis in pursuit. And another tale would have focused on Sheriff Brackett called The Frozen Ghost, which does sound like a Scooby-Doo episode title. Hutchinson would have also continued the story of Dr. Loomis's son David, and go into various random slayings by Michael throughout the 1980s, ultimately creating a rich history for the Halloween universe that would have filled the big gaps in the H2O timeline and reached beyond the shadow of Halloween Resurrection. But this all never came to pass because, as is often the case with comics, nobody got paid, and people need to be able to pay their bills while making stuff.
Michael Myers is fucking dead!
Stefan Hutchinson's Halloween comics were extremely ambitious and did a great job taking things back to basics with Michael Myers as a Halloween boogeyman without overcomplicating the character. The comics could sometimes read like misery porn, with stories generally grimmer than typically seen in the films, but they're also a labor of love by hardcore Halloween fans, and to me they set the standard for what Halloween sequels could be, and, shape willing, we'll get more Halloween comics at some point in the future, especially since there may or may not be a long gap between Halloween Ends and the 14th film or TV show or whatever's next besides the video game. Anyway, please give me more Halloween comics, Malika Cod, ideally written by Stefan Hutchinson. How do you feel about these Halloween comics, though? Do you want to see them return? Let me know in the comments below.
Why do you keep them under there?
Mom doesn't like me to have them.
Neutron Man, I can understand why.
Before I go, I want to give a shout out to my sponsor, me. Pledge to my Patreon today to support the channel and help it continue to grow, and you'll also get access to weekly movie nights every Sunday, and archive commentaries if you missed the movie nights live. Just $5 a month to get a movie night every week. Here are the movies I'll be streaming next Sunday. Pledge to patreon.com/Dr. Wolfula if you're interested in my bonus streams, and I thank you in advance. This video is made possible through the pledges of my Patreon supporters, and I'd like to give a very special thanks to the kind folks pledged to my shoutouts tier. All of their support on Patreon means a lot to me, and it helps my dark influence continue to grow. If you liked this video, like it, and if you loved it, click the subscribe and bell buttons for more videos. Be sure to also keep in touch by following me on social media at Dr. Wolfula. While I still have your attention, consider pledging to my Patreon to support the channel and get bonus content like private movie night streams with me and credits in my videos. Consider pledging at patreon.com/Dr. Wolfula. Also, check out official Dr. Wolfula merch on tpublic.com/user/Dr. Wolfula. Thanks for watching. Dr. Wolfula signing out.